and welcome back to my channel. It's October and the perfect season for pumpkins, even here in Hawaii. So let's go and paint pumpkins today. As for supplies, I'm using my Khadi cotton paper sketchbook. I have my handmade Aloha watercolors. It really doesn't matter what paints you have at hand. Any types of yellows, oranges, and reds in watercolor will do for this project. And I also have a teal green shimmer watercolor, but you can just as well use any kind of green watercolor. I have water and I have a large mop brush. For the line work, I'm using this Tombow brush pen. The good thing about this brush pen is that the tip is hard, so it doesn't fray or break, even though the paper is pretty rough. If you use a regular brush pen on this type of paper, your tip is gonna fray. So I recommend you either use a fine liner or a hard tip brush pen like this one. I'm gonna list all the materials down below in the description. The technique we're using today for part 1 is called wet on dry, which simply just means you're applying wet watercolor on dry paper. I'm grabbing some of my Indian yellow here and just very quickly painting loose strokes onto my paper. I have the pumpkin shape already in mind, so I am trying to make my blobs pumpkin shape, so just ovals, and you can use the stroke of your large brush to indicate the basic shape of the pumpkins. However, bear in mind that we're gonna go over everything with our ink later on once everything is dry, so don't worry about getting the shape perfectly. At this point we're just playing with the paints and very loosely getting the shapes down. I'm also really not worried about leaving all this white space, which naturally happens when you use very rough paper. So I actually think it has a nice effect. It kind of leaves highlights, or it makes space or room for highlights on the pumpkins later on. Okay, let's put a small one down here. And just in order to be able to distinguish these two better, I'm gonna add a little bit of red. Please feel free to also use a palette if you like, so you can judge the paint, what it looks like, how thick it is better. But I really kind of want to, for this exercise, be as quick as possible so I don't get into overthinking mode. Really just get the paint onto the paper. If you don't mind mixing and blending the colors, you can overlap the pumpkins and just let the colors mix. I just picked up some of my primary red and adding it to some of the pumpkins for a little bit more interest in color. Alright, let's see. I feel like we have a bit of a white space here, but I can fill this out later with a few flourishes with my ink. Alright, I think we're good. So we're gonna let this dry. Oh, hold on! I forgot something. Our pumpkins don't have stems yet. So Let's dip into the green shimmer, and as I said in the beginning, feel free to use any type of green you have. So in order to create some nice blends here, just dip with the tip of your brush, dip the green paint into the still wet paint, and then from there drag it out. And we do this with all the pumpkins. And again, please don't worry about getting these shapes perfectly at this point. You just want to create something like a, like a circle shape within the pumpkin, and then drag the paint out to form the stem. Like this. And then over here. And over here. So right now, these could also be bell peppers or tomatoes, but with the line work, we're gonna define them and make them look like pumpkins. All right, I'm gonna let this dry thoroughly. Please make sure you let this dry very well before you add the line work with ink. My paper is completely dry. To make sure, I went over it with a hairdryer. Pumpkins have a very distinctive shape, so let's start with the basic shape for the body of the pumpkin. I usually start in the middle with a curved line like this, and then do the same thing on the other side. And as you can see, I'm not creating a monoline. I'm pressing down harder and lifting the pen up a little bit to create a line with a bit more variation. And then here from the center going outwards, I'm drawing my next line and another one, and the same one over here, and here in the back. I can even add another line indicating the back side of the pumpkin here. Then for the center, you want to draw something that is a bit similar to a spider net, kind of like this shape, and then it goes into the stem. You fill out the stem with parallel lines, and again I'm using less and more pressure with my brush pen to create variation in my line work. And then what I did was combine or continue the lines and connect here with the lines that go down here alongside the body of the pumpkin. Alright, let's do the same thing one more time, but with a different approach where we start with the stem and then continue with the body. It might be easier for you to start with the stem of the pumpkin. So let's do it this way for this one, and then you can judge which way you like better. So I just drew the stem lines and then continuing with my spider web here all around, drawing in the parallel lines and then continuing the lines and connecting them to the corners of my spider web. And then back to the body. So I'm starting in the center again, and continuing to the sides of the pumpkin. The further back you go in your pumpkin, the more narrow the lines are. So here in front, you have the widest or the most width, and then towards the back, the lines or the width gets thinner. and indicating the back side of the pumpkin. And I like to add a few fun little squiggles, dots, etc., and then even some flourishes. Again, it really depends. Some people prefer to do one type of line drawing for the whole piece and then add the details to fill out the spaces, and some prefer doing it like while they go, so kind of like finishing every pumpkin. So just try out different ways and see which one you like best. The next one I'd like to show you is a jack-o'-lantern or a carved pumpkin. We'll start with the stem, open spider net, and then it's going to be the same principle of lines, but we're going to draw in the carved face first. So 2 triangles for the eyes, and then the grinning mouth. Leave out the teeth like this, and you can leave it like this if you like, or you can draw in these lines here to indicate a bit of depth for your pumpkin, or to indicate that it was carved. And then just like with the previous pumpkins, we're gonna draw in the lines. Make sure you don't press down too hard for the lines here in front, so that the face of this jack-o'-lantern has or gets enough of a limelight here. And then you might have noticed that I don't continue my lines all the way through. I do lift up my pen occasionally, so it gives it a bit more of a not random, but more of a loose feeling. So not drawing in or not continuously drawing in the lines, I think gives it somewhat more of a relaxed and loose feel. I'm going to continue to go all around and draw in my line work for all the pumpkins. I'm gonna put on some music, and feel free to come up with your own fun pumpkin shapes. Naturally, you could also draw faces into all of these pumpkins, or none at all, however you like it best. And here we are with our double page full of pumpkins, and now you can just look around and see if there are any white spaces that you feel could be filled, and then you can just add a few more lines and dots, little tiny elements. You could do little stars too in different colors. I'm just keeping it to black, but you can also maybe use some gold jelly roll pen. Okay, this is our pumpkin double spread. I hope you enjoyed today's session. If you did, join me on Thursday for a live session. I'm gonna show you how to paint this Pulelehua Kamehameha Monarch Butterfly in watercolors, gouache, and colored pencil. See you then. Happy creating! Aloha! Hey Leo, do you like pumpkins? Not so much, huh? Just what I thought.